Hello everyone, welcome to the newest episode of TIC Podcast. This is China, or China Network Podcast, or China Podcast Network, China something, I'm not sure. The name of this podcast has changed a lot, okay? So Ian, let's stop changing the name of the podcast. Let's stick with one, okay? All right. Now, Ian has a few of his own little mini-series. He has a series about fatherhood. He has a series where he kind of goes into different environments and lets you hear just what these places sound like, kind of the background noise of everything, as well as our A to Z series. But what I want to do is start my own series in which I answer a lot of questions that people ask me on Facebook or on Twitter or just all of the social media. There's lots of social media out there. I get questions a lot because of my YouTube channel and all of this other stuff that I do in trying to tell foreigners what living in China is like. So that's what this series is going to be about. I'm going to be answering those questions. And what's great about a podcast is that I don't need to deal with all these time constraints. I can take all the time that I want with any of the questions, and I could do every single question if I wanted to. And I'm just sitting in my living room right now. I'm just looking out of my house, so I can do this just about anywhere. I recorded this podcast already. I was walking around outside, and there's a little bit too much background noise, so I didn't end up going with that version. So I'm trying again, and just going to see what happens. Now, this episode is actually just something I want to talk about because I've been thinking about it for a while, and I haven't gotten around to doing it. But starting next week or whenever I decide to, pick up this podcast again, I will be answering questions. So, what's the topic? The topic is 5 years in China. What do I think about it? What do I think about these 5 years that I've spent in China? And will there be 5 more years? Or will I be leaving soon? Or, well, just how has this time changed me? When I look back on what I was like when I first came here, what do I think about that guy? And am I any different now? So that's obviously going to be a very, very, very big question. It's a very big subject and deeply personal in some ways. There are some things in here I haven't really talked about with anyone, with the exception of my wife, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to kind of break it up into, I suppose, 4 parts, though I may go off on tangents or whatnot. I'll first go through why I came to China and what happened when I first arrived. Second, I'll kind of go through my journey, what has happened to me over these years. Then third, I'll go into where I am now, what I'm doing at the moment, and how I feel right now. And then I'll jump into what's next to kind of round out the episode. So, as you can tell by some of those subpoints, this will be quite a lengthy episode. The one I recorded a couple of days ago was like 53 minutes, but I'll try to keep it within reason because 53 minutes is a really long time. So let's get into it. Why did I come to China in the first place? Well, I came to China really to learn about China. I came to China for China. There's a lot of expats who come here just for work vacations because, my job at home is too stressful. I'll come over here, teach English for a bit, and then go back home. Or they come because there are a lot of these expats who are basically functioning alcoholics, or they're potheads, and alcohol is super cheap here, and it's and you can get a job and be a complete pothead and be an alcoholic and pretty much never get fired. There's a lot of those. Or there's guys, especially guys who come over here to bang lots of girls. But I came here because I loved China. I wanted to learn about China. I had a professor who I had a professor in university who just loved everything about China. He loved talking about Chinese culture and Chinese history and Chinese language and Chinese literature, Chinese food, Chinese blah, 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 everything China. And he just basically, he single-handedly changed my life, I suppose, because I'd never really given much thought to China at that point in my life. And he had set off all of these kind of new, he had opened up these new areas in my mind that I didn't even really know were there. And that was a really interesting experience for me, to have a whole new country, a whole new side of the world opened up to me. And I was just kind of intoxicated by everything that I could learn about China. I thought, wow, China, here's a place where I can just learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and never get to the bottom of anything. This is a lifetime of learning that I can engage in. And I really thought that was something amazing, because a lot of people, they get very comfortable in what they already know, and they're very comfortable with the things that they don't know, and that's it. I'm the kind of person who always wants to be learning new stuff. And that's essentially why I came here. Along with, I am a little bit guilty of wanting to escape. There's a lot of people who also come to China for escape because they don't like where they're living. They don't like, maybe they don't get along with their family, or they are just trying to start over. And I was kind of in that boat as well. I was really sick of Texas. I didn't like Texas, which, by the way, if you didn't know, I'm from Texas. I don't like all the conservative stuff, all the politics, and I'm not particularly religious, and that is Texas culture. So I was trying to get away from all that. But anyway, that's why I came here, a combination of escaping Texas and trying to learn as much as I could about this thing. So there was an opportunity that came up for me to study abroad, and I took that chance. I got to be the first foreign exchange student at a little university in northwest China, and without a doubt, it was the happiest, freest, most intellectually stimulating, and just downright fun. It was the most fun time I've ever had in my life. It was the best time in every conceivable way. I could not get enough of it. And I said, oh, I'm going to be here for a while. I got off the plane, I looked around and said, oh, I'm going to be here for a while. This is awesome. And I've basically been here ever since. So that kind of concludes part one. Let's get into part two, which is my journey. The journey is hard to talk about because there is so much that can happen in 5 years. I mean, when I came to China, I initially had this plan. I said, okay, Austin, you'll go to China for 5 years, and then you'll take stock of your life and see what you want to do next. And here we are 5 years later, almost 6 actually. I arrived in China on February 23rd, 2011. Yes, I still remember the day. And I believe I remember the time. I believe I arrived at 11:17 because in the morning, because yes, I remember really strange stuff like that. But anyway, yes, it's time to take stock of my life, and I'm going to be kind of thinking out loud, remembering, reminiscing, maybe, and just kind of analyzing my time in parts 2 and 3. So part 2 is kind of my journey, what's happened to me, where I've been, what I've done, and what I think about it. Sorry about that. Well, I kind of put my time in China into 3 stages, and it kind of goes along with culture shock. A lot of people, well, pretty much everyone knows that there are a few different stages to culture shock. I believe there's 4 or 5, but I've basically gotten 3 or 4 of them. So like when I first came to China, I moved to Lanzhou, up in the northwest of China. And Lanzhou was kind of my honeymoon time. And, oh, well, speaking of honeymoons, I do want to mention something as well. I have heard a lot of expats talk about this 5-year itch in China. It's a lot like the 7-year itch in marriage, where if you can stay in China for 5 years and still feel okay with everything that's going on, you can stay here basically forever, because most expats in China do not stay more than a year or two. That's just a fact. You may want to go over to China and change your life and start over, but I'm going to tell you that most of you who come over here will not stay more than a year or two. That is just a fact, because China is so difficult to get used to, and China is such a different animal than anything you've ever dealt with before. So I don't want to scare a lot of people, but I just want to be honest. Like, that is the way that it is. It's very rare that I meet people who have been here as long as I have. And it's very rare that I've met people who've been here longer than I have. Most people, it's hard for me to make friends here in the expat community, because, you know, there's all these loser expats around here. And also, most of the expats will be gone in a year or two. So it's hard to make friends in the expat community. So yes, it's been 5 years, and I'm taking stock, and I'm trying to think, you know, am I having that 5-year itch? Do I want to get out of here? Because frankly speaking, the past year has been really tough for me. You'll see that I've put out a lot less videos. I've put out a lot less content in the past year because of things that have happened in my life that have been really difficult. But anyway, getting back to the episode, when I think about my time in China, I split it up into kind of culture shock stages, where when I first arrived in China, I was in Lanzhou. Lanzhou was kind of my honeymoon phase, where everything was so great. Everything was amazing. I loved Lanzhou. It was such a fun time, a magical time, and I was in this place without many foreigners, and I was kind of enjoying the attention, and I was learning all this stuff, all this amazing stuff, and encountering, you know, having all these encounters with the local history and with Lanzhou's place in the Silk Road and the Silk Road history, the cultural exchange, the exchange of ideas that happened along the Silk Road, and the legacy that left upon that region of China. It was an incredibly profound and intoxicating and addictive experience. And that's something about life here that I do love. It's really addictive. The self-reliance that you have to have to stay here for a long time is amazing. Like, that feeling is just so hard to describe, where you come to China and you don't know anyone, and you can build up a life by yourself, and you can be kind of a self-made man or woman. It's a little bit kind of self-congratulating and maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but I kind of like that. And that was something that kept me in China. And one of the things I loved about this very beginning part of my time in China was being able to create my own life without having to worry about what my friends will think, what my family will think. Will this fit into the Texas culture of white Protestant Jesus people who always vote Republican? I don't have to worry about any of that here. So that was really something incredible. And it kept me here. So everything within the first 2 or 3 years of my time in China, in Lanzhou, was just, I loved it, because, I mean, it was that honeymoon. It was that first time of being so far away from home with people I didn't know, besides moving to university, I suppose. And I just loved it. It was the honeymoon. And I had so many first experiences. the first time I ever had this kind of food, first time I ever drank this weird kind of drink, the first time I traveled to this kind of place, the first time I learned a word in a certain dialect, or even just learning Chinese in and of itself, which was an incredible challenge. All of these first experiences were really fun, and I knew that these were experiences that my friends back home would never have, my family back home would never have. And I loved that. I loved being able to think about, wow, I am living this amazing life here. And that lasted for a long time, that kind of honeymoon phase of everything that I just said lasted for 2 or 3 years. I mean, of course, there was cultural adjustment, and there were a lot of difficulties. Learning Chinese especially was quite difficult. I did come to China as a student, and I studied for the first 3 or 4 months I was here. I studied for about 12 hours a day to 15 hours a day. I didn't do anything except for study, eat, and sleep. I didn't do anything else. Now, I'm not exaggerating. That was my life. That was it. That's all that I did. I did nothing else. So it was tough. It was really tough. But after a while, I found some more efficient study methods, and I got used to learning Chinese, and I figured out the most difficult things, and boy, it was smooth sailing after that. And I began to get really comfortable in that life in Lanzhou. I began to be very comfortable within, I don't know, that's it. I was so just happy and comfortable, and almost too comfortable, really. And that's why I left Lanzhou, because at that time in my life, I was always looking for new experiences. I was always looking for those firsts. I was always absorbing so much information. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything, and I wanted to learn why everything was the way it was. Now, when I say everything, I mean literally everything. I hate it when people say literally, but that is the truth. I was asking so many questions that I just think are ridiculous now, but that's what I did. I was like, oh, wow, why are the buildings arranged in this way? Why are they a certain color? Why are the trash cans designed like this? Why do they only put trash cans here, here, and here? Why do restaurants look like this? How come they don't do things this way or this way when they serve food? How come, like, just ridiculous questions, especially stuff with like buildings and trash cans and all that. Why are gardens arranged this way? Why blah, blah, blah. Like, oh my gosh, I must have just been insufferable. I must have been unbearable. I was asking so many ridiculous questions. But that's who I was. I was incredibly, I was interested in everything to a fault, I suppose. And that's who I was. So I left Lanzhou to have a new experience and to add more experience to my resume and all this, because I did want to come to China for 5 years. I wanted to build a solid resume, build a solid CV, and then maybe go back home to get my master's or PhD. That was the original plan. So in pursuit of that, I decided to move to Tianjin, which is kind of the second part of my journey, which is, I suppose, the negotiation or the adjustment stage. No, I think it's called negotiation stage within culture shock terms. And Tianjin was a rough time for me because I realized I was not, by this time in my life, I had been in China for about 3 years, I think, almost 3 years, 2.5 years. And I had gotten over the initial hurdles of culture shock, and I had gotten used to life, and by that time I had a girlfriend who is now my wife. I had a girlfriend, and I experienced kind of the ups and downs of that, and the headache of moving all the way across the freaking country. That's a long way to move. If I recommend you take a look at a map of China. From Gansu to Tianjin is quite a long way. And I was in this new environment, but I found out that I didn't like that new environment so much. I wasn't quite as open to new experiences as I thought I would be. And I came to China as I fell in love with the history of China. I fell in love with with the more traditional side of China, which was what Lanzhou was, which was what Gansu was, with all of that stuff with the Silk Road and all of that. And then I moved to Tianjin, which is a pretty modern city. It's just in Beijing's shadow. It's within a stone's throw. It's very European, and it's very westernized, at least in the way that it looks, in the ways of getting around, and the foods that are there and stuff. But I really didn't mesh with the city because I saw a lot of things that I didn't like about life in China that were just all too obvious in Tianjin. I get kind of sad talking about this because it is something that that I don't like. There are several things I don't like about living in China. Of course, air pollution is a thing that nobody likes, but that's just something we have to deal with here. I mean, I never liked that, so I can't really say I've soured on it or anything. But moving to Tianjin, I found I didn't like the food as much. The food in Lanzhou was fantastic, and I loved it. And it was cheap, easy to find. And in Tianjin, I lived in a place where food wasn't that easy to get. And the food was incredibly expensive. And most of the local food I didn't like. I preferred having foreign food over the local food most of the time. I just didn't enjoy myself with food. I didn't enjoy my university job. I didn't enjoy my students. I didn't enjoy a lot of things about that time in my life. And I did some things that I'm not proud of. And I saw some things that I am ashamed to say that I'm not ashamed that I saw them. I'm saddened that I saw them. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things in life here that I just want to talk about quickly. What's changed, what hasn't changed. I still love the food here in China. I still love studying the history here in China. I love how easy it is to get from place to place here in China. I love meeting people from all kinds of different backgrounds. We have all different kinds of stories. I love always having a job here. I love how cheap it is to rent a house here. I love so many things about life here. But something that I saw in Tianjin and something that I don't like about life here is politics. And when I say politics, I don't mean like the government and all of that. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the politics here. I used to be when I first came here. Man, I loved it. But now I've kind of soured on it. But I don't really want to talk about politics. Government. I mean the politics of relationships. Relationships in Tianjin were very political. They were very... People were only interested in being your friend if you had something to give them, or if they thought that you could maybe give them something later in the future. They weren't interested in being your friend just to chat and have a beer and bullshit with you and just hang out like they did in Lanzhou. In Tianjin, there was so much cutthroat competition in every aspect of life. People would just get new friends and discard new friends and discard old friends, and would just go through friends like they were toilet paper. Man, they would take that friend and they would use that friend and they would throw it away, never to be seen again. over and over and over and over and over again. It was all about, what can I get out of this person? What can I get out of this person? And then after I'm done with them, what can I get out of the next one? And I didn't like that at all. There was such a lack of empathy and sympathy and compassion for other human beings. And that is true to some extent all over China. Now, I'm not saying like there's no compassion anywhere, nobody's, everyone's mean or whatever. I mean, that is an issue, yeah, but it's, how do I say this? Yes, there's an issue with a lack of compassion among certain parts of the Chinese population when it comes to like business and things, but for the most part, people here are fantastic. I love the people here in China. I just did not love that within the people of Tianjin. And I hope to never set foot in that city again because of things like that. And that was something that I found really hard to deal with in Tianjin, along with things like the air pollution and the food and whatnot. So Tianjin was a really hard time for me. And that was my negotiation stage. And then within culture shock, that's the stage where you begin to hate this new culture that you're in. You begin to hate this country that you're in. And this is when most expats leave. This is when most expats leave. Because when you first arrive in China, everything's amazing. And then you're excited by all these new experiences. And then after a few months or after a year, you begin to peek behind the curtain. China puts up a really good front. By all appearances, China's a nearly perfect country. But when you began to look what's behind that curtain and to see how they built that appearance, that's when people get turned off, and that's when people leave China. And that not very nearly, but it made me it gave me pause. It gave me pause, and I began to kind of question, what's kind of next for me? Am I going to stay in China much longer? And I wanted to get out of Tianjin as fast as I could. And that brings me to the next place, which is Chengdu. Chengdu is kind of the final stage of my journey because I'm still here. I'm still in Chengdu, and I'm still doing my thing here. And this is what I call I forget what the actual culture shock term is. I think it's the adjusted stage or the cohesion stage or something. It's the stage where you feel at peace, where you've made certain tweaks in your personality and you've decided to make peace with the things that you can't change. So what is that? The serenity prayer or something? I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like if you have the power to change something, try and change it. And if you don't have the power to change it, then recognize that you can't change it. And hopefully you will have the wisdom enough to know which is which. Change the things you can't. Change the things you can change. Accept the things you can't change, and have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And that's what Chengdu has kind of given me. I know that there are certain things I can't change about life here. And there are some things I've known all along, but now I've accepted that. There's a really big difference between knowing something and accepting something. And I've seen a lot of things in China that I don't approve of and that I don't like. Things I've mentioned before. Oh, and also corruption. That's a big thing, especially as I've moved up in the teaching world and I've moved up in the university world. I went from a very low university post, kind of out in the like Albuquerque of China, just this place that no one really cares that much about. Well, if you're from Albuquerque, sorry, I'm just, I don't mean anything by it. it's just this place that, yeah, people know, but they don't really care about it. It's not really of much consequence. And I've moved up into this really quite a very international city. I'm teaching at one of the top universities in China. It's a top 10, I believe, or top 15 university, and I'm doing quite well for myself money-wise, and I've built a pretty good group of friends, and I'm doing well by all counts. And I see what you have to do in order to get those kinds of jobs. I've seen how the sausage gets made, so to speak. I've seen how those top universities get their reputation, and I've seen how students get into universities, and I've seen how businessmen build their empires, and I've seen lots of things that just frankly aren't so nice. And I'm kind of accepted that. In Chengdu, being here, I've learned to accept certain things about life here, and I've learned to just have fun with the things I can have fun with. And you know what? I'm loving it. I am having a really great time here in Chengdu. Although I've run up against some really tough stuff in this past year. Well, with losing a job and finding another job and then finding another job and getting in fights over visas and having people use me and I don't want to say blackmail, but like holding power over me in certain situations in ways I don't really want to get into. It's been tough, but I'm still here. And I feel like I'm a better person because of my experience here in China. And I just, frankly speaking, I love life here in Chengdu. I am finally in a place where, you know, people always, I've noticed among people that people, when they talk about their lives, they always seem to be on the way up or on the way down. And they never take a moment and they never figure out when they're at the top. They never figure out when they've peaked. They never figure out when they can sit back and enjoy their life. But I'm lucky enough to have done that. I'm lucky enough to be at the top and enjoying this time in my life. And I'm not on the way up or way down. I'm just in the right spot. So now let's think about my life here. Let's think about it. And let's talk about where I'm at in my head. And, you know, if you come to China and you're wanting to stay for a while, this could be you in 5 years. So I really want you to pay attention with this part. I want you to really listen up because this could be very applicable to you. Let's talk about it. When you're in China, there's certain things you need to be aware of and that you need to be okay with before you come here, okay? Before you come here. One, you'll never be Chinese. No matter how native you go, you'll never be Chinese. You'll always be the foreigner, okay? Doesn't matter what you're speaking, doesn't matter what you're eating, what you're doing, you'll always be the foreigner. Of course, within your group of friends, they will accept you and they will know how comfortable you are in China and they will just accept you as one of their own. But with 99.999% of people you meet, you will be that token white guy or black guy or different shade of yellow guy or girl. And you got to be okay with that. And the other thing is, when you're here in China, you really have to think about why you're here and what's next, because most of the jobs here are teaching jobs. They are ESL jobs. And you will never make a career out of ESL teaching. And that is, I suppose, tip number 2. You'll never make a career out of ESL teaching. in China. Let me be specific. In China. In other countries, you can do that. Not here. Every contract you sign is 1 year long. Every single one. It'll either be a 6-month or it'll be a year contract for teaching. And that's it. If you get offered more than a year contract, I'll be really surprised. Even if you teach at university, you'll never be offered tenure. You'll never be offered a professorship unless it's I only know of one person who's ever been offered a professorship. And that was an assistant professorship, and it was a 5-year contract. I've only heard of that happening one time in all of my years here. So anyway, you can't make a career out of that here. All you can do is just have a job for a little while. And you got to think about after China, what kind of circles are you going to be running in? Are you going to stay within China circles? Or are you going to kind of go back to, as my mother once put it, are you going to go back home and find a real job? I've heard that before. When are you going to come home and get a real job? Oh boy. So you got to think about that, because some employers will be thinking along those lines. They'll be like, oh, you were teaching at Disney English. Ugh. What were you doing there? Or, oh, you were teaching at EF, or you're teaching at Best Learning, you're teaching at Lanzhou Jiaotong University. Oh, university, nice, but you're teaching ESL. And they'll start to wonder, like, he was in China for so long. What does that mean for his job prospects here in the USA? Does that mean he's unemployable here? Why didn't he just stay in the USA? Why did he have to go to another country? And what's wrong? They'll kind of be thinking, what's wrong with this guy? So you got to think about that. If you're going to stay here for a while, make sure that if you're going to be here for a long time, make sure you'll be staying in China-related circles after this. Because, I mean, I will. I'll always be hovering somewhere in the middle between US and China, because that's my interest. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. So it's fine for me. But if you are not one of these people like me who intends to work in international relations, which I'll get to later, if you don't intend to work within international relations or within international communication or something, then you should really think about that. Okay, so that's enough of that. And something else that I'm kind of thinking of is when you're here for a really long time, you kind of, how can I say? Well, because I've been here for 5 years, I've not only gotten used to the country, and I've not only matured in the way that I approach different aspects of life here. I've grown as a person. I'm older now. I'm almost 30. I came here when I was 22, and I'm 27 now. I'm nearly 28, and I have changed as a person. And my entire adult life outside of university has been in China, which is kind of a scary thing now that I think about it. It's kind of a scary thing in one way, thinking about going back, because aside from a few months working in the US between my first and second stint in China, I've never worked in the US. My entire experience is here in China. And wow, it's formidable. But you know, it is formidable for someone my age to have already lived in China for 5 years. That's not very common, which is kind of an asset for me. But okay, let me get back to my point here. I have changed as a person. I have become older, and I've maybe matured, or I've just changed. Let's not assume that I've matured. I came to China because of all the mystery. I wanted to learn everything, get to the bottom of everything, and learn why everything was this way. Everything, why. But now I'm perfectly content to let there be mystery. I don't pursue things that I would have pursued a long time ago. Language learning being one of them. There's an open HSK 5 book here on my couch. HSK, for those of you who don't know, is the Chinese proficiency exam. And while my spoken Chinese is, I think, fantastic, I don't really read much in Chinese. My kind of academic Chinese and my written Chinese is not very good, which is why I'm doing this. I want to get better. I want to improve that part of my Chinese, but it's so hard to crack open this book and learn, because I'm just like, oh, my Chinese is good enough. I don't need to know more. So that's just part of getting older. You stop seeking out a lot of these new experiences, and you stop going after the mysteries in life, and you become content with stability. I was reading this passage in this Chinese class I was taking a few weeks ago, and this article was a few pages, but I remember the initial premise of the article was that because as you get older, you stop chasing adventures and you stop taking risks and instead choose stability and comfort. When you reach that point in your life, you should try to adventure a little bit every day. Try to take a little risk every day. And it talked about the different forms of risks and everything. And so I want to get back into that because I've stopped that. And I want to change that. I want to get back into having new experiences, because I haven't had that many new experiences for a while, other than maybe traveling to a different city. So I do want to get back into that. That is something I would like, and I've noticed the way that I glaze over certain controversial topics now is quite different than I used to go full on into the controversial topics, like, yeah, let's talk about government, yeah, let's talk about politics, yeah, let's talk about religion. You know, I want to try to show Chinese people another perspective. I want to not change people's minds, but I just want them to know there's something else out there. Now I'm just like, nah, good luck with that, Austin. Have fun. And when I see people trying to do that, I look at them really, I just kind of shake my head and go, oh, that's so cute. You're trying to fight it. And I also I look at a lot of foreigners that way who are new to China, who've only been here 1 or 2 years. And I'm like, oh, isn't that sweet? I used to be like that. But hopefully I was never that bad, you know? A lot of expats do that here. But, so I don't know. I've changed quite a lot in who I am and the way that I approach things. And I think even some of you who have watched my videos, if you've been watching for a long time, you've probably seen that change in me as well. Though, I don't know, I've never gotten so deep as I have today with those particular issues. And, because I'm not just looking at things on the surface. I have not only peeked behind the curtain, I took a flying swan dive into life behind that curtain. And I've been here now, and I accept some things that I can't change, and I just try to have fun with the rest. And I've accepted that I can't know everything. I can't do everything. I can't see everything. I can't know everything. I can't. And I've since accepted there are so many people out there who are so much more intelligent and knowledgeable than me in virtually every aspect of life. And you know what? I'm kind of okay with that. I do want to get better, and I do want to improve myself. But I also have accepted there will always be someone better. So, and I think when you accept that reality, not just know it, but I mean accept that. Not just know it, but accept it. And some of you older people maybe will truly understand what I mean by that. When you accept that, that's when you know I don't know, that's when you know you've kind of matured, and that's when you know that you've reached a, I don't know, I feel like when I finally realized that and accepted that, I was like, oh, this is what being an adult feels like, I guess. And I guess I've become an adult here in China. So, I mean, I'm still immature sometimes, and I still do stupid things, but no, I feel much more like an adult now than I used to. I'm not a kid anymore. And I did get to be a kid in China, and I did get to kind of grow out of that, and I got to be an adult, become an adult here in China. And I don't know, there's not too many foreigners who can say that. I don't think. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if you've had a similar experience to me, please let me know. And I think that's enough for now with that. I've been talking for quite a while. Let's talk about what's next. Oh my gosh, 45 minutes. 45 minutes. So what's next for me? Well, since I've been here for so long and I've become just almost complacent in a way in my life. I've just been very consistently I'm kind of at the top and I'm kind of looking around. I'm on the mountaintop and I'm looking down on everything below me and trying to figure out where's my next destination. I've reached the summit of this particular mountain. What's next? It's hard to say. I think the next thing is I am married now. Speaking of being on the mountaintop, I want to mention really quick. Being in China, I got the chance to live pretty much every dream that I had ever conceived of for myself. I wanted to escape Texas. I'd wanted that for a long time. And bam, I did it. I escaped Texas, okay? And the dream after that was, okay, I guess China will be that place. Let's go to China. I did that. I'm here in China. I had this other kind of dream of making videos, doing video blogging, because I'd seen that on YouTube, and bam, I did that. Recent computer problems notwithstanding. And I dreamed of becoming internet famous. When my videos went viral here in China, bam, I did that. Did a bunch of TV shows, did a bunch of interviews, had some mini docs made about me, had all kinds of things happen with that. Got lots of free trips and free food, and it was great. I did that. I even had a stupid dream of mine, which was to be in a band. I had that. That came true when I was in Lanzhou. I got to be in a band. Not only that, the lead singer and guitar player. So wow, okay, there's a dream of that. I had a dream that I kind of had right before I came to China, which was to find a Chinese girl and maybe marry that Chinese girl. Bam, I did that. My dream was to get a job teaching at a university, work with university students. Bam, I did that. Every single thing I've ever wanted for my life has come true. Everything I've ever wanted in my life is here. I've got it. So then I got to think, what's next? I am on the mountaintop. I have everything I want. So what do? I'm 27. I've peaked in life. Is everything just going to suck after this? I don't know. That's weird to think about. Because I don't know that many people who feel like they have kind of peaked in life this young. Am I having a midlife crisis when I'm 27? I don't know. Or maybe were my dreams just too low to begin with? Maybe that's it. My dreams were just too low and I did them, and now I don't know what to do now. So I got to figure out what to do next. And I don't know, this thing, learning Chinese, not learning, but improving, I suppose. My reading and my kind of book language Chinese is part of that, trying to get better, trying to find a new dream. And I do want to go back to school. I would like to get my master's degree. This will be something I do in the next 2 years, I think. I would like to study Chinese this year. Well, this year and I suppose most of 2017. Work on improving that Chinese. And then look for a school. Get my master's in something, God knows what. my goal would be, the thing that I want to do with my life is to improve communication between China and I guess the Western world. China and maybe just America, because that's where I'm from. China and the USA. And I don't know how to do that. I don't really know what that means. I'm not going into politics because, come on, government is a joke. The UN is a joke. I'm not going to do that. Although, if I did end up working at the UN later, that would be really funny because I just said that. We'll see. But I don't want to do any of that. I want to improve the understanding and the communication between ordinary people. And I want people to realize that that people from other nations aren't out there to get them, and they're all just, I don't know, why can't we just all get along kind of thing. I want to improve the communication between nations. I have no idea how to do that. Whether I pursue that through a media perspective, with video making and with films, or do I pursue that within a business perspective, creating websites? I do have an idea for a social network, but I have no idea how to get that accomplished. I have ideas about writing books. I have ideas about lots of things, but I don't really know where to begin pursuing those. If you have any ideas or any suggestions, please feel free. Facebook.com/LetChinaSleep2, the number 2. You can send me a message, leave a comment, or go to this podcast's comment. I actually don't know the Facebook URL for this particular podcast. I'll get that for you in just a minute here. Now, yeah, if you've got some ideas, please let me know. That would be awesome if you could do that. Or just if you have some suggestions. And the other thing in my life is I'm almost 30, and it's time, a lot of people would say, to have a baby. Ooh. Now, I don't want kids. I don't want kids, especially not after having worked at a training school teaching English. But I did know, and I have accepted that marrying a Chinese girl means you have to have kids. That is just the way that it is. Now, I do want to tell you that if you marry a Chinese girl, you are going to have kids, period. That's just it. That's a non-negotiable thing. So anyway, yeah, having a baby. So what do I do with that? Where do I raise this kid? Do I raise this kid in China? Do I want to raise a kid in China? Honestly, no, I don't. I don't want to raise a kid in China. There's so many problems here with air quality, with education, with food safety, with politics, with all kinds of needlessly complicated paperwork. So what do I do with that? Or do I move to Taiwan? Or do I move to Taiwan, then get my master's there, and then have a baby there? Or do I go back home? What do I do with all that? I don't know. I don't know. I've often heard that China is a young man's game. And when you, quote unquote, grow up, then you go back to the USA. You go back to your home country. I've heard that from quite a few people. So is this the part where I say, all right, I'm not a young man anymore. It's time to go home. So I've got a lot of things to think about. I've got a lot of things to think about career-wise and family-wise. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I will tell you this. I will bring you all along for the ride with my videos or with podcasts. And we'll all be there together. We'll all be there together. And we'll just, I guess, see what happens. So I think I'm going to end the podcast there because I've been talking for probably about an hour now. Let's see. Good God, 54 minutes. Wow, that's about as long as the first one that I recorded. So if you are still here, my God, you are an awesome person. Just leave me a comment and let me know that you got here. That would be cool. And yeah, I suppose there's all that there's left now are plugs. Please go to Facebook.com/TIC China. There you go, TICCHINA. That is the podcast Facebook page. We don't have that many followers, so if you could give it a like, that'd be great. You can keep up. You can keep up on SoundCloud and iTunes. And please check out my YouTube channel. That'd be great. I think probably all of you, or 90% of you who are listening, already know. Check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/Austin Guidry 2, or just search Austin China. That works too. So I think that's about going to do it. So please send your questions to the Facebook page, send your questions to my Facebook page, or to my YouTube channel, or to my Twitter at Let China Sleep. Any of those are okay, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And, well, that's it. Just answer your questions and maybe help you feel a little bit better about moving to China, or just clear up some of the mysteries. Like I said, improving communication between people of different countries and minimizing misunderstanding. So I think that'll about do it. It's 56 minutes, and I'm going to stop talking. So I guess I will see you all next time. Thank you.